Brilliant. Well, I think we're ready to kick off. If everyone can jump on mute, we'll hopefully have some time for Q&A at the end. We've got a lot to cover, but hopefully I can fly through lots of it and keep you engaged. Some of it might be quite heavy. I'll try and make pricing the most exciting topic as I can, but we're going to go through it all. One of the things that'll be useful, definitely have a pen and paper. Another thing is if you get a chance to have your own pricing sheet up, and depending on how you show your pricing, some people have a PDF, some people show it on their website, but it'd be useful having another tab because that's what we're going to be looking at a lot, and referencing your own will be useful. And then I'm always here in Team BB to give any support afterwards, as always. But to kick off, the goal, or I'll tell you a little bit about myself just for a moment to give you some context. I'm Hamish Shephard, the founder of Bridebook and the CEO. I'm also a venue owner with my brothers, a venue called Headser House in Buckinghamshire. But before my venue time and Bridebook time, I was ashamed to say I was an investment banker and had a miserable career in the city, but managed to do lots of very boring but supposedly very difficult exams to qualify as a chartered financial analyst. Is my the lowest moment of my life, but an achievement I did nonetheless. And I'm sort of analytically able, let's say. So one of the things we had the real opportunity with Bridebook is we have 15,000 couples now join Bridebook a month. We have over 70% of UK couples actually now use Bridebook to help plan their weddings. So we have amazing amounts of data, and actually diving into all of that, and also all my experience with Headser, hopefully can pull it all together to give some really useful direction. We've obviously all gone through hell this year. Next year is going to be a great one. Laura's guaranteed, the Prime Minister guaranteed it. So here we go. But hopefully we can sort of pull it all together. And I obviously talk to venues the whole time and have huge amounts of experience with our own venue, and pricing has been something I feel we've made sort of a lot of breakthroughs on at our own venue, and keen to share that advice. And then obviously over the last few years, when I've had the benefit of Bridebook at full steam as well, using lots of that knowledge over the Headser has been incredibly applicable and incredibly useful. So enough about me, and we can dive into what we're going to go through. We're going to look at the strategy of pricing, and then the three key bits we're going to look at is the three parts of sort of pricing strategy: is segmentation, and then dynamics, and then display of pricing. And I'm going to talk through all three in lots of detail so we can sort of dive into it. And then pulling those all together, we'll be looking at the recovery strategy from COVID, starting to look at next year and some important pointers on there. So first up, here we go, understanding your strategy. And this is, setting prices, as we all know, is a complex task. I've been through it at Headser for many years, and often it felt like a sort of finger in the air exercise, not terribly data driven often, because it's hard to have data as a standalone venue, and hard to know the sort of competitive pressures and have knowledge outside your own venue. And that's hopefully what we can help a lot today. It can be difficult to know where you sit on the pricing structure, how you compete. I've put some questions here. Should Sundays be cheaper than Fridays? What if you have a really cheap Tuesday? Is that going to scare off people who are paying more on a Saturday? But pricing is such an important, a powerful lever. And you see, the way you set out your pricing is going to determine, massively affect the behavior of your clients, of your couples, and how they book, and also obviously has the biggest impact on your revenue. So first up, the goals of pricing strategy, broken into 5, and these all break into our 3 points of segmentation, dynamics, and display that we'll talk about in a moment. But the number one goal of pricing is to maximize the revenue you can get on your most popular dates. So on those Saturdays in August, you want to be getting the highest price you're able to get to fill them all. The second part is to encourage clients to take less popular dates. Obviously, you've only got 4 August Saturdays a year. How can you get people to be taking those other dates? Pricing, obviously, an important lever there. The third is to present your pricing in a simple, logical way that clients can follow and feel, can make an informed decision themselves due to the presentation. The fourth would be making couples know they're being treated fairly, and that's through price transparency. That's something to talk about further. But one of the things that our industry is always sort of tarred with is a reputation of being overcharged and being a bit opaque and people hiking up the prices because it's a wedding. That's where having transparent pricing absolutely removes that and gives couples a huge amount of confidence. They shouldn't be negotiating, or they're not being overcharged. This is a very clear pricing. And then the fifth one is giving couples choice so they feel in control. And everyone always likes choice, and once they're having some choice, they're going to feel empowered. So I'm going to talk through that a bit further. So as I said, the 3 bits we're going to look at, the most important ones, we have segmentation. So how are you going to group your prices intelligently into the segments that make sense for your business, for your venue? Then we're going to talk about dynamics, and this is about recognizing how different price segments can be compared against each other and how different prices can interact with each other. And then finally, talking about how to display your prices and giving clients options and helping them come to quick, confident decisions, which obviously helps your business significantly. So we're on to segmentation. So how do we want to group our prices? And there's going to be a lot of information here. I warned you we could get quite data-driven and heavy, but I will stay at the high level. But we have absolutely vast amounts of data. Over 170,000 weddings were planned with the help of Bridebook in 2019. And if we look at that data, we can break it all down into these quite clear segments. So I'll be talking about lots of stuff. Again, this is data driven and my own opinion, but we can have discussions on this, but I'd be confident in the assumptions I'm putting forward here from looking at a lot of data. So you'll see there are really 3 seasons of the year for the wedding industry. We have the peak season, which we'll all know well, which runs from June to September. Then there's shoulder months, which we generally see as April and May and October. And then we have our winter months, which really run from November through to March. We'll talk a bit more about these in a moment. And then on the weekdays, if we're looking at the data, we see Monday to Thursday are the quietest days of the week. Then you have Sunday as the next. Then Friday is the second most popular. And then obviously Saturday is the most popular. From the government data, actually only half of weddings actually take place on Saturdays. And that's an important thing we'll talk about a bit further. So that's already starting to show us there are these quite clear buckets to break our pricing into, break our demand into. And this is where, if you're going to break those down into segments then, and hopefully everyone's following here, you've got the 3 key segments of peak months, shoulder months, and winter months that we just spoke about. And then we have Saturdays, which are the most expensive, Fridays, second most expensive, Sundays down to Monday to Thursday, the midweek. And if you imagine this in a 12 category grid, as you can see on the screen, hopefully, these are running from category 1, Saturdays in your peak months, which are obviously the hottest dates possible, and hopefully you're easiest to sell or you're going to have the most demand for. And then you're running down to those midweek winter dates, which have less demand. And that's where from this, you want to be, or what I'd be recommending is looking at pricing for each of these segments. And this is something I'm going to actually do a worked example that hopefully won't be too in depth, but will be a useful journey to go through as a group. And that's where I'll actually, I've skipped slides there, sorry. So if we look from there, what we want to be doing is matching the supply and demand for each of these categories. So one of the biggest challenges we have as an industry is our supply is fixed. We wish we all had unlimited peak Saturdays, but we don't. We only have 4 August Saturdays. We're going to have 52 Saturdays in a year. One of the most important things to think about is if you just do one price for the whole year, which most people wouldn't do, you'll end up undercharging those people who'd be willing to pay more on the peak dates, which we can talk about, but you'll also then remove a huge section of possibility for people who couldn't afford that high price. So if we said we were going to charge £5,000 for category 5, everyone above it would be able to afford more than that. So you'd hopefully sell all these dates. You could likely sell a higher price for category 1, but you'd also be excluding all these other dates underneath. And as I said, I'm going to go through a worked example. So hopefully this is we'll all follow in a moment. Yeah, as I said, if you only price for your August Saturdays or your summer peak, you're going to scare off all the other categories below that top left corner we were just talking about. So to maximize your revenue, the optimal strategy is to have a price for each of your categories. This is something we've seen very successfully at HEDSA, and I've spent lots of times looking and working with other venues and see this as a very successful approach. And then the only other bit I'd just add is pricing is not purely a science. So there is lots of idiosyncrasies about every venue. Every venue is different depending on where your location is, how many weddings you want to be doing a year, where your business mix lies. This is something I could talk about. We've got here, if Christmas, if let's say you're a central London venue, you'd imagine actually Christmas is an incredibly busy time for your non-wedding business. So actually you might want to be thinking about December being a peak month for your venue. If you're based in the north of Scotland, May might be a more of a wintry month than if you're in Kent, and maybe it's a peak summer month for you. So you want to think about the individuality of your wedding, think about your pricing, and tweak that. But what I would highly recommend is starting off with this grid of our 12 prices, and just going to give you a quick example of that. Cool. So even more data, but don't worry, we're going to go quickly through this stuff. But this is just a breakdown of all the weddings that take place in the UK of every year. So we've seen this chart. This is the actual granular breakdown, and I've just put purple here is the non-peak or midweek dates, and then you can see Saturdays and August. So in August Saturdays, or even actually it looks even busier, July Saturdays, there are almost 19,000 marriages take place on Saturdays in July. I'd assume actually August was a 4-week month and July was a 5-week month that year, 5 Saturdays, but August would be the busiest month. And then you can see all the way down to January, Monday weddings, there are only 500. So 500 weddings taking place. So this is just giving you some confidence in these breakdowns. This is our grid we just saw. So we've got the peak pricing going down all the way to the lowest pricing. And this is actually HEDSA's grid. So this is how we've priced our venue and had great success over many years optimizing this. So our peak month, Saturdays, £14,995. This is dry hire. We're a high-end venue, and then all the way down to almost 70% off, so 2/3 off, is down to our winter midweek prices. It's down to 5,950. So you see this spread. One of the idiosyncrasies we have about our venue is we actually have a lot of Asian wedding business, and most Asian weddings happen on Sundays. So actually our Sundays are as busy as our Fridays, and that's why we've grouped them. So this is the HEDSA pricing list. You'll see we've actually chosen to merge these two, but for a lot of businesses, Sundays will be quieter than Fridays, and you want to split these out to have the full 12. And I'm going to talk through a few little examples here. But now, to scare you all, I did an economics degree. So we're going to talk a tiny bit for about 1 minute about economics. But this is where, if we just took the example of the difference between dynamic pricing and static pricing, stay with me, but these are our three prices. We've got £15,000 for our peak Saturday and £9,000 for our winter Saturdays. And if we had the example of, we've got 100 couples who are interested in HEDSA, 20% have a high ability to pay, 60% have the medium ability to pay, and 20% have the low ability to pay. With fixed pricing, we'd sell 20 at the peak price and 60 at the middle. But for our lowest pricing, the people wouldn't be able to afford it because they can only afford £9,000 and we've charged 12,000 for all. So hopefully everyone's following here. So our total potential revenue would be £1 million. Whereas with dynamic, where we're charging more for the peak month and less for the winter month, we're able to extract much more. We're able to extract 22% more revenue selling the same. I can hear someone off mute. Hopefully I'm muting you. So a tiny economics chart. This is just the difference between the dynamic pricing. By charging two prices, you make extra revenue. So don't worry, that's the last chart we're looking at. But now, one of the most interesting things about our industry is obviously the challenge we have is we can't sell 60 shoulder month Saturdays because we have limited availability. So this is where we only have 16 available Saturdays to sell in the peak months and in the shoulder months. So this immediately actually means by spreading your demand further, rather than our previous number of saying we could increase revenue 22%, you can increase it actually 54% by doing dynamic pricing. So this all might sound a bit complex, right? Hopefully not, and it's easy to follow. But you'll see this obviously with airlines, where we've seen every airline has moved from, maybe a decade or two ago to very fixed prices to now very dynamic prices, because this is, they have, their whole business model is to fill up the plane. And now it's very rare we all sit on, half empty planes, because they're making sure they fill them up. And that's the model of dynamic pricing, where you're able to have great success for this. So if I quickly went back to our example here, we've got our dates and our prices. If you chose to say, right, I'm just going to price at the middle Saturday price, the price that will sell all my Saturdays, you'd end up excluding absolutely everyone here. The only two areas you would sell is your shoulder and peak Saturdays. And if we look at the actual data, you're only targeting 40% of the market then. 60% of possibility is missed. So we looked at the larger scenario. I'll whiz through here. By moving from static pricing to dynamic pricing and having a fuller grid, you're able to sell people much deeper into your calendar. And I know no one's planning on selling every day of the year, but it allows you to sell. And we're going to talk through some of this and going through it quickly, but it'll give a lot of context to the other few slides we're going to talk through. But just give you an idea, if you set your pricing just as a one price for your Saturdays from your shoulder months, the potential addressable market you're going after is capped at £400,000. And if you move to a dynamic pricing model, just like HEDSA, the addressable opportunity we're going after is £3 million. Okay, and this, obviously is transformative. Even if you said we're not going to sell anything in winter, you've actually increased your addressable market, the potential market you can go after, to £2 million. So it's gone up 5 times just through tweaking your pricing and having a much broader pricing range. This is all led and based off the actual demand and pricing breakdowns we see across the industry. So I hope everyone's followed that. I know that might have been quite deep, but this is where having multiple price points, you end up with all these different little bits of additional revenue, which obviously adds up to a much bigger pot. You're extracting more revenue, or being able to go after more revenue than you could. So a tiny few examples. I looked at a few people's pricing yesterday, no names, so not putting anyone on the spot. But if we quickly opened up, this was a well-known venue, lots of people will know. By charging, it's a top venue, they're charging £18,000 for venue hire. But this is where I'd recommend, if you're pricing, they just have one season, April to mid-October, actually I'd highly recommend they create a summer season and a shoulder season, because it's going to be very expensive, or it's very hard to convince someone that a Saturday in April is worth the same as a Saturday in August. And we're going to be talking about this when we start seeing how prices interact. If we looked at another one here, they've done a great job on starting to break it down further. But what we might be saying is actually the differential between a Saturday and a Friday, between a Saturday in August and a Friday in January, is actually, in my view, not wide enough. As we saw with Hedsa, we actually have a 70% discount between these ones. And I'm going to talk through that further. For this, another great well-known venue, this is where you might be feeling the same, where you say, what might be challenging here is having a shoulder month. So if you say, I'm going to get married on a Thursday in August, it's £10,000. But if I'm getting married on a Monday in January, it's £9,500, and I'm getting sparkling wine rather than champagne. And all these dynamics are incredibly important for couples, because this is what they're doing. As we know, we're talking to millennials, they're used to comparing prices. That's how it works. They want that transparency, and this is where you could be holding someone back. Here, they've done a great job on lowering the price for the midweek. This allows them to push people that way, which we'll talk about. But I would suggest there's a gap in the middle here. And this is one of the best ones I saw. What we might talk about here is display. It's actually quite hard to compare prices here. They've actually done a really good job on breaking the prices out. What they've even done is split Thursdays out as its own. So you're having 15 categories of prices. And the only bit I'd suggest here is having more of it as that display grid I was talking about, where it's much more comparable. So you can see, oh, well, if I move already, you can see me struggling to find where to go. But if I move from my Wednesday in September to a Wednesday in October, I can save £400, and maybe a client will decide to do that. So that was a lot of detail, but I hope everyone's followed there, and that just lays the foundation for some shorter slides now to talk through some of these pieces that allows. So once we have our grid, this is where we're going to start talking about dynamics. So I've already given you a taste of that, how people are going to, people will start comparing, as I was just doing there. Shall I get married in October or September? But also this really starts you to allow to move couples yourself, and your sales grid becomes a really, really powerful sales tool. So this one, we want to, we can look through this, but you want to ensure it doesn't get undermined. As I was just saying, if you have some hugely expensive top price, you still want to make sure your lowest price isn't ridiculous, that it undermines your top price, but it still needs to be within that range that it's very persuasive for people to move dates. And as I just said, the pricing grid, the second one, should assist your selling. So I'm going to do a worked example here that would be happening at Hedsa. And we're a beautiful venue, and we're a popular venue. When someone comes on a Saturday and says, I want to book a August Saturday, which we're very excited they've come to the venue. We sell our Saturdays hopefully quite quickly. The goal of our price, which is very high end, is to be as highest as we're able to be confident we'll sell all our Saturdays, but we don't want to be underpricing them. So it'd be the sort of maximum price we think we're able to fully sell our Saturdays. But the journey we're able to then do is say, well, look, actually, and even if the Saturday is available, we say the Saturday, if you move from the Saturday to the Friday, the couple will actually save, just to the day before, you'll save £3,000. And if you move to the Thursday, they'll actually save another £4,500. So it's phenomenally persuasive. These are extremely large amounts of money, and what this allows us to do is help move people away from the Saturdays, which we all know are precious and sell easily, and move them into our other dates. So talking through some sort of vulgar numbers, and obviously this year's been a disaster for hosting these sort of numbers. This pricing you've seen we're an expensive venue. In August, we never really talk about it numbers, but in August we were going to do 26 weddings. So we basically sold every single day. It was only the Tuesdays we weren't selling. It's obviously a real pain this year to postpone all those weddings, but it is incredible that we can sell out on Mondays, sell out our Wednesdays, by allowing people to move into these ones, and they end up having, the person who's paying £7,000 is delighted they're getting a venue that's worth £15,000 and is willing to move, and they can pay £7,000 and having honeymoon or the best band or absolutely everything, and it's still a luxury proposition. So we're a very high-end venue. You might have seen we just had The Crown filmed at us, and we have we are a very high-end venue, but we're able to move people very effectively and still keep our quality incredibly high. And then on to our third point, which was display. This is just a few tips and a few pointers, but when we talk about having that pricing grid, the most value of it is transparency. And as I said before, a lot of our industry suffers from a really bad reputation about pricing, and actually giving pricing brings so much confidence to couples. So things like, and we see this from all our Bridebook data as well, couples are very turned off by price on application pricing. You very, very rarely see that at all anywhere now. If you were going to a restaurant and it said, we won't tell you the prices until you get here, everyone would feel very uneasy. If you're booking anything now, you expect to see an upfront price. The price is hidden. Either they think it's extremely expensive or something strange is going on. We see that heavily on Bridebook. I think we've written here venues that actually display their price and get 80% more inquiries than venues that don't. So if you're on the call and you're not showing your prices, that'll be a strong recommendation to show your pricing. We've also seen actually you'll see as a venue, publishing your pricing is an extremely effective way to ensure the quality and pre-qualify your audience. If they haven't seen your pricing, you might get a higher volume of inquiries, but a lot of these might be time wasters, might overwhelm you, and actually you want to be targeting an audience who can afford you and putting your time better spent on converting those people than sifting through a lot of people who can reach your budget in the first place. And then finally on Bridebook, we always prioritize venues who have pricing. That's what our couples want. Our algorithms are designed and self-learn. So, if something's popular with couples, they'll show it more, because obviously we want to be a popular product with our couples, because they'll come back more regularly. And then in return of that, they'll drive more business to businesses, which is our whole aim. So yeah, that would be one about pricing. Transparency, and this is where talking through your grid can be incredibly helpful. Everyone likes choice. There's a thing called the Goldilocks pricing, where everyone likes to go for a middle option. You'll see that in software packages or McDonald's or Starbucks, where they have something pretty high end that only a few people go for, something pretty small that most people avoid, but it's giving people a lot of confidence. You say, oh, well, that middle one's just right. That's where that Goldilocks phrase comes from. And people like choice. They then feel in control. And actually the positioning of the other two makes the middle one feel like a sensible price or a sensible size. If you're talking about Starbucks coffees, the big one and the small one just make you think the middle one's a good price to spend a lot of money on just a cup of coffee. But this is where being able to talk through a couple of September dates are very busy, but we've got space in October, and if you move to that, they're a lot less. This gives people a lot of transparency, a lot of confidence. Again, people appreciate fairness. They've never planned a wedding before. That's one of the biggest value adds we bring, and our goal as Bridebook to our couples is to help them through this process. I'm sure all of you as venues want to do that as well, and helping a couple even with transparency just gives them a lot of confidence. They say, great, I know all the prices now. I can make an informed decision. There's nothing sneaky going on, and they can, you know, feel very in control. And again, the big one to feel is couples are very logical. You know, we're all used to saying, well, if I fly on a Monday, it's going to be cheaper than flying back on the weekend. And you know, that honesty and that I don't know if that logic, I was about to say logicality, logic is the word, brings a lot of confidence, and they're applying all that logic that they have from buying something previously, you know, even though they never most likely bought a wedding venue before. This fills them with, you know, a lot of sort of practicality that they can flick through this. Cool. So then a simple one is always look at clarity and simplicity. Funky numbers just are hard to do the mental maths. How much cheaper is it to move from a Friday to a Thursday? You want them to be able to do that very quickly in their head. And also don't overwhelm with information. Do the key distinctions, look at package highlights. What's the difference? And all this applies. I should have said this very early on. I've been talking a lot about dry hire, but we have the identical. We have packages at Hedser as well. We call them sort of hand-picked and try and avoid the word package, but we have packages. And that's where just showing the key differences up front allows them to make a simple choice and not be overwhelmed with information and start to get concerned. You want it to be a really simple, transparent, confident, clear decision, and then and you know, bring that confidence will help people make a decision. And then the third point was just on which I'm sure we all know, on add-ons and excluding or excluding a VAT. And the only thing I would highlight on these is just being transparent. At Hedser, we exclude a VAT from our prices. So we'd have, and on our pricing, and anyone can go look at our sheet, we have very clear things saying these are excluding VAT. The main reason we do that is we also do corporate business, and that obviously excludes VAT. So we just don't want to be reiterating the image where you say, oh, when I look at your corporate pricing, it's a lot cheaper than the wedding pricing, and actually then be misled on VAT because they're the difference. And that's why we have that. And also we have add-ons. We charge people for late night extensions and fireworks, but these are optional add-ons, and we put those very clearly. Most people, the majority of people, aren't going to take them, yeah, people understand, there's an increased cost for these things, whether it's clearing up and moving livestock so we can do fireworks, or so we can have the team on later. But just making sure it's all up front, just again, gives a good experience. Cool. So we're on to our final couple of slides. I know there's been a lot of information, and I'll pause for a moment before I put more information on the page. But I know there's probably a lot of information, but hopefully you've taken the key bits from it. And as I said, you know, Bridebook team and I'm here to talk anyone through these pieces. I'm sure there'll be questions. Hopefully we can have some time for questions shortly. But when we look through those three bits, just to recap quickly, we said looking at the segmentation, and from our information, we'd see very clearly there's those 12 segments, 3 being the 3 seasons and 4 being the breakdown of the week from Saturdays and midweek. And you might want to break those out further, you might want to compact them, but those would seem like the very sensible segments. And depending on your focus, you might be a conservatory and only open in the summer. Well, that's obviously going to change it. But you look at those segments, then we're thinking about the dynamics of how can that grid really help you sell and move people through, persuade them. Well, actually, if you can move someone from a Saturday to a Friday, that's a massive win, because it's obviously more people want a Saturday than a Friday. And this grid's going to help you enormously to do that. And then finally, when we think through on display, that's, as I just said, making sure it's clear, making sure it's got a lot of confidence so couples can feel very confident in their decision. And that obviously helps you secure the business. So hopefully that's a wrap up of a lot of information. So if we're looking on, moving on from COVID, there are 4 things I'd just highlight, which are obviously highly relevant at the moment. So One second, I'm just going to have a quick drink. So pricing is your most powerful lever in revenue growth. We've seen that from Hedsa. We used to have very static pricing, and over a couple of years, and even a real example, we moved May. We assumed May was a peak month, and we did 4 weddings, and we moved it into off-peak, into a shoulder month, and a year later we sold 14 weddings. So that's, you know, and the difference was only a couple of thousands of pounds. I think it was, maybe it might have been £1,500 moving from that date, or you can see it in our grid. What that meant wasn't just couples wanted to save that £1,500. It meant suddenly, rather than having an August, if you're having a June wedding, we could sell much more confidently and say, well, if you want to just move, you know, a few weeks early, you can actually save quite a bit of money, and allowed us to move a lot of summer demand into May, and obviously has a fantastic revenue generation. All our businesses are fixed cost or heavy fixed cost businesses, so being able to spread that demand out, you know, just automatically increases revenues and automatically hits the bottom line. So pricing is incredibly strong lever. You only have these certain number of dates to sell each year, depending if you cap yourself, you want to grow to as many as possible. I know a lot of venues that limit that, but still those limited number of dates you're going to sell, or the maximum number of dates you're going to sell, extracting the maximum revenue on those is obviously wholly contingent on your pricing, and hopefully this is giving you a lot of ideas for your pricing. A second piece, and obviously a lot of people are looking at, we've all been doing it for a year, on postponements and people being nervous. Something I'd really talk about is always try and offer upgrades rather than discounts. So if you're looking at, let's say well, basically an upgrade, or if we read it here, an upgrade only costs you your cost of sales, whereas discount obviously costs you the full amount of revenue. So if I was going to offer you £1,000 discount or £1,000 of champagne, obviously actually the £1,000 of champagne normally costs quite considerably less than £1,000 to the venue, and can often seem more generous than just a whatever the percentage discount would be, going from £7,000 to £6,000, or getting £1,000 of champagne. Sounds incredibly generous and actually costs you much less. So you might want to think about that a lot. We think of, you know, offering a engagement shoot at your venue whilst you're empty can feel like a very generous offer and actually costs nothing. Whereas once you start discounting, that's just immediately hitting your bottom line, and you know, instantly impactful, and there's little to do about it. The next piece I'd focus on is cash is king, as we all know. Securing cash flow is what's most crucial. There is a huge backlog of weddings. We have more than 254,000 future planned weddings from today onwards being planned on Bridebook. More than 100,000. Beth, she's on the call, could tell us the exact numbers. More than 100,000 are backlogged, still haven't managed to break through and start booking. And all this business is coming. What we obviously all want to be around for, you know, they're saying the roaring 20s is coming. There's going to be this huge flow in a couple of weeks' time with the engagement season coming. We're going to have tens of thousands of more couples getting engaged, and you know, tens of thousands coming on Bridebook. So securing that new business is absolutely vital, because getting that cash flow, and now all those new couples are going to be majority booking into 2022. So, you know, getting that deposit up front is incredibly valuable. What I'd really focus on caution on is moving postponements from, you know, and you know, people are still nervous. Hopefully as quickly as possible those nerves are going, with great announcements on vaccines and the PM and things like that. But postponing a date starts to take this future revenue from you. Moving a Saturday in this May to next May or May 2022 can have a huge impact on your revenue and prolongs the impact of COVID. So securing new business as quickly as you can is the fastest way out, and that means someone's is postponing to a different date, and within that time frame of 2021, that's something you might want to consider very heavily. And then finally, looking at cash flow again is looking at your terms and conditions. And this is something we've all been reviewing heavily, and there's been lots of concerns about this. But being able to secure deposits early when you're just focused on cash is going to be a lot easier than finding cost savings in most scenarios. So being able to secure upfront deposits rather than having to find the equivalent in a cost saving the running of the business, especially when majority of our costs for most of us are fixed costs. That's where securing cash flow, making sure your deposits are coming in early, and your contract's designed to support your cash flow is incredibly valuable, and I'd highly recommend it. So that is it. We've got 15 minutes for questions. If you put them in the channel, I'll go and look through a couple and try and answer the relevant ones in a moment. What in the chat even? What I'd say, there's obviously been a lot of information here. We would love to help. Do reach out to your account manager if you're on Venue Pro, or reach out to your contacts, or just email business@Bridebook. We would absolutely love people being able, supporting people, and especially at this time, getting everyone roaring back in 2021, 2022 is going to be a fantastic time. We've been in the worst industry in the world this year. I'm highly confident the next year and two, we're going to be the best industry in the world. There aren't going to be two Glastonburys because one didn't happen last year, but they're going to be double as many weddings, or close to double as many weddings, for a very long time. And I'm, racing back. I understand everyone's had the worst year possible, financially and emotionally, and getting set up now's a great time to do it. And hopefully this session will be useful to give you some pointers and some ways to think about your pricing, and hopefully it gives some real some easy wins to be in a fantastic way to sell more, or to charge more, or increase the demand for your venue. The team are raring to help. We have some great templates we can help you with if you want to, if you email the team, and we can at least give you a template of the grid and give you some direction. We'd love to help with that. So on that note, I'm going to jump onto questions. I can see there 35 chats. I hope they're not all saying you couldn't hear me all along, but let me have a look. Here we go. Right. Let me, so let me just go up a little bit. Okay, I would be concerned about creating a new pricing strategy without upsetting those who've already booked and paid for the upcoming years. Any tips? So I think the interesting one there would be would be at least drafting a new pricing strategy and seeing who it's going to, I wouldn't want to use the word offend, but who is it going to affect? Because there might be scenarios where actually, if we looked at the if we looked at the audience of, I'm trying to think through some of those examples I showed you, but there might be many scenarios where existing couples are actually paying a lower price than you're now going to create. So if you're going to carve out your peak dates, if everyone had paid £12,000 for Headser, if we looked at, and we were just selling our Saturdays in those first examples, actually we'd be creating a higher tier, and 16 people who got the 16 peak Saturdays, made a great saving. So I'd look through that. And in the reverse, that's where you would want to be thinking about it. And you might want to say, well, actually, the majority of people are going to be, sold the majority of their weddings for 2021. I'd highly recommend everyone's already heavily sold for 2021. If not, message, we can help you speed up on that. But for 2022, looking at where you're at and introducing this, if there are a couple of people you're going to put the noses out of, you might want to talk to them and say, well, look, we're making this change. We're one of the things you might want to do actually is change the messaging. So if it's a package, just rename the package and make sure there's enough difference that the person couldn't be comparing them. But if you're having to give them, oh, we're going to give you a case of champagne, or if a problem arises, something like that, hopefully that smooths it through. We issue our prices generally try and look 18 months out. So you'd be wanting to look at summer 2022, which should be absolutely prime time for now. That's where the majority of people start looking from engagement season. And if you're introducing packages, that's where I definitely say create, if you're changing something, rebrand it. We have at Hedsa the Bluebell package, the 1776 package. This allows us to create a new package and not start affecting all those people who've been booked before, which obviously we've got to honor their prices, and we're not going to be coming back to someone saying we're putting up their price. Cool. May often have 2 bank holidays. Do you often charge extra for those weekends, even though May is a shoulder month? Yes. So what we would do, and this is what I recommend to others, and it was in some of the slides, is if it was a Monday May bank holiday, the Sunday would count as a Saturday and the Monday would count as a Sunday. And the same for Easter weekend. If it's a Friday, so Good Friday would count as a Saturday and Easter Monday would count as a Sunday. And then the Tuesday would be back to midweek. So I'd just flex it like that. I would highly recommend not starting to put this all in the grid, just have it very clearly written out underneath. I think if I whiz back, sorry, over here, well, actually, I remember, actually underneath this one, they've done it very well and just laid out the conditions, and on Hedsa, we actually do exactly the same. How would you determine a shoulder month? April is very busy for us, but May is a little quieter. The same with November being quieter and then December busier. That would create a complicated display graph, wouldn't it? So one of the things to really think about is what I would posit is if your April's very busy and your May's a little quieter, that doesn't align with the data. So my gut instinct would be the first thing to look at is May mispriced? So, and I'd love to find out the answers, Tessa, you message me. But what I'd expect there, if April's busy and May's quiet, is you've put May in your peak season. And lots of people say May is part of summer. And what that means, and it's that sort of example I said before, is that ends up driving business out of summer into April. And your May ends up quieter. And we did exactly the same. Then we moved May into being into a shoulder month. And actually that's allowed, May is now our second busiest month of the year. And even though it's a lower price, allows our sales team to sell it incredibly well. Well, rather than getting married on June the 1st, why don't you get married the weekend before and you save £3,000 and ends up pushing demand out of June into the shoulders, which obviously is incredibly effective. The same with the November being quieter and then December busier. This again, I'll just be looking at your demand. If December's busy because you have lots of corporate business going on, or because you've charged it as a winter month. If you're competing with Christmas parties, you probably want to keep the pricing quite high. If you're a remote barn location that is very unlikely, isn't near offices, is very unlikely to have any Christmas business, you probably want to have December as a similar winter pricing, and see if you can fill it up. And obviously it's a romantic time of year, and probably December's a nicer month to get married in than January. I assume most people would think that. So you want to see how you're looking, but it'll all depend, and happy to talk through this stuff, on your location and different business pressures. And also one of the things that really sells December at Hedsa is we say all the decorations up, we do an incredible tree, the whole house looks incredible, so you're going to have to spend vastly less on flowers. It looks spectacular. Whereas if you get married in November, obviously we don't have the Christmas decorations up. And then we actually started moving our Christmas decorations further into November because it was a good hook for couples, and say the tree's going up on, and we actually have to change the tree now in a normal year. I think we end up having 2 trees because the poor tree doesn't last the 6 weeks it's up for. But you might want to consider some of these things, other November couples might find it bizarre. There's a Christmas tree at their house, so do plan ahead. Let me look through. Is there a way of seeing pricing data for comparative venues and Bridebook in one place? So if you're on Venue Pro Expert, which one of our levels, which lots of you are on, what you can do is see see your competitors. So if you go on to I think it's called I think it's market and competition, I'm forgetting the name, but one of the menu items, I'm sure you know it. If you go on there, you can see who you're most commonly searched against, who you're most commonly, if a couple's inquiring to you, who are they most commonly inquiring to also, and that will be your competitive set. We show you stuff on how quickly they're responding and some key metrics, so you can really start to understand where you sit in the market. And then I'd highly recommend looking at those venues. The majority of them will have their pricing on. We've highly encouraged everyone to do that, as you've heard, and you can see where you're sitting. You often that should be a very informative exercise. Couples are doing exactly the same, so don't think this is some like espionage or something. It's this is how you're being compared, and you want to be, that's your competitive set and help you really understand your positioning in the market and accordingly. I think I had one here. Where was it? On a boarding school, we are a venue within a boarding school. How should we price when we have very few dates available? So this is one of the hardest, one of the challenges, and this is what we had with Hedsa, where whilst we have a lovely grid of 12 categories and hopefully we put even demand into all of them and it all goes perfectly, what you might have is, I assume that at a boarding school, some of the time you're closed, or you might have months where, you close for refurbishment, or people live in the house, they don't want weddings and that. So you end up having this like very spiky demand, or you'll find just gaps just through circumstance, serendipity, where you say, actually, bizarrely, we haven't sold June this year. And that's where hopefully your pricing grid can help you move those people, and you can start sort of strategically saying, right, well, actually, guys, do it this way. For people on Venue Pro, again, we obviously have couple targeting. So this is a feature we have on Bridebook where you can say, I want to target people for these dates with this budget, looking on getting married on this day of the week even. So literally on the grid, and it's based off that. So you can say, well, if we looked at our lovely grid, we've got a hole here. Our midweek weddings next spring are looking empty. How can we target that? And on Bridebook, and this was one of the big one of the reasons I set up Bridebook and built it, because we had the identical problem ahead. So we go, what can we do about this? How do we target couples getting married midweek next spring? Doing a magazine advert isn't going to work or whatever. And that's, we built that functionality, and now on, because we have all the couples on Bridebook and we know everything about them, and they've told us their dates, their capacities and budgets, we can then, boost you into that. So that's a feature, but with your pricing grid, this will help as well. So, actually our midweek dates are looking empty. When those couples are coming in, let's really tell them, guys, if you move from your Saturday to your Thursday, you're going to save £7,500. That's incredibly persuasive, and start filling up all those dates. And that's what we've been lucky to have some success with. There are a lot of questions. Very we are let me look through. There are a lot. I'll ask Beth, who's on the call. Beth, if you make sure we copy all of these. I'll read them all. We've got 13 more questions, and I'm aware of the time that we're wrapping up soon. But we will write a clear note. I'll try and add, when we send a follow-up, I'll write some of these questions, because I think very flattered everyone has stuck with it and didn't fall asleep when I opened up the economics chart. So it's brilliant. I'm proud of that. Let me see if I can pick another one. What is the acceptable average percentage price increase yearly? It's important to keep this realistic, or post-COVID, would a jump in price be expected? So this is where and exactly with Hedsa and we can share more learnings on this. What I wouldn't be recommending at all is, and now assuming you've followed our advice, which might be hopefully you've got your 12 grid now. What you wouldn't want to do is just say, right, every price is going up 5% because that's what we're going for, or saying, oh, we're going to add £500 onto each price. If you end up adding a fixed amount onto every price, your highest price is incrementally going up a smaller percentage than your lowest price. So that's definitely a no-no. You want to, at least, if you were going to do that, do a percentage amount so they all go up evenly. But what you want to look at is look at your demand. And this is where, when we're just doing that example, Tessa's question on the April selling well, but May isn't, that's where you want to be doing it dynamically. Maybe dynamically is the word of the day, where you say, and we do this ahead, so we say, right, we're going to put up prices, but we're looking at that overall. We want to increase our revenue year over year, but that might include, right, we're actually going to reduce the cost. I think this year probably half our prices on our grid we've reduced the costs on, but we will, on the ambition or the plan, that will make higher revenue because we'll sell more dates of them. We fear they were overpriced or they were interacting quite strangely. We say, oh, well, would you get married on a Thursday in April when it's cheaper to get married, on a Saturday in March? And you go, oh, well, no wonder it's a bit, and so it can be like, it's very fluid. That's something we really want to bear in mind when we're saying, well, do you have big Christmas party ambitions next year? Well, if you do, you might want to be saying, well, actually, I understand we're not going to put up our I hope you've got the gist there, but we'll definitely look at, there's going to be increased demand in the market. The two examples of that can be, well, I'm going to sit with my numbers and increase my prices, and the market can, will probably allow that for a couple of years. So that's definitely a possibility. But what I would more recommend, and hopefully is the learnings from today, is selling more weddings and being able to spread that demand. So if you've got your 16 weddings in August, your 16 summer Saturdays, and we say, right, we're gonna put all our prices up by 20%. Let's really go for it. You're only, you're going to sell 3 more weddings on that scenario. If you manage to unlock your shoulder months, that's where we're saying you're going to be able to sell 16 more weddings just on your Saturdays. And although that price, let's say it's 80% less, is vastly more than the 20% price increase. The number one thing is a fixed cost business. The way to increase the thing that has the biggest impact on your revenue is filling your venue. So, and I'm not saying fill it to the capacity you want, but selling those additional dates has a huge impact versus incremental price increases. Once you're at the capacity you want, then obviously the only journey from there is increasing your prices. And again, you want to think about the dynamics on that. You might say, well, actually, the main one to think of is your top price, and is what is the highest price you could set that you're confident you will sell all your Saturdays in that period. Because the last thing you want to do is, if you say we've put our prices up 20% and we've lost 25% of our bookings, it's a real like zero-sum game, and it could be dangerous. You might end up over pushing it and you're out of kilter with your competition. Whereas actually selling dates in, so Headser, we can say, well, really the vast majority of people who come to Headser, we now have an option for everyone. If you want to spend £5,000 renting the house, you can get married at incredible Headser, and it's going to be on a Thursday in March. That's an amazing opportunity if you want, and that's how you spread that demand and has the biggest revenue impact. Let me pick one more. Would you recommend including accommodation in an overall price? We don't at the moment, as not everyone wants it. So we feel it gives them flexibility. So we did a similar at Headser. The key learning from that is whether it's a a sort of unexpected add-on or an expected add-on. So as you said, some people want it, some people don't. So it's really nice to give them the flexibility. But what you want to avoid is where we had the scenario, we said, you've exclusively rented Headser, and they were like, fantastic. And they was like, oh, and now you've got to pay £2,000 for the bedrooms, which they're like, well, we've rented the house and all our marketing is this exclusive home. It was when we didn't have bedrooms for a long time, and then we restored them and put them in. And we've actually seen much more success having them included. But then for some packages, our lowest package will actually give them the option of taking the accommodation out, because lots of these weddings actually don't want it. They're looking for a lower price option, and it actually makes the business easier for us if we don't have people staying the night. So there's a saving for us. So we try and balance that out. But the key bit, and I could have gone through more examples, but I didn't want to I didn't want to get lost, is having it transparent and clear. Try and have it on one page. Having it on Bridebook, we list it out. Prices from to, what does that include? Do you have packages? Is this dry hire? Where someone just feels very confident. They say, great, we're going to rent this house. That price is going to include everything. But if I want fireworks, of course, I've got to pay a bit more. And if I wanted to stay later, oh, it makes sense. Rather than it being like, oh, these people have just charged me for, something that just feels like a bit of, to just give you a real history of Head. So we launched it 12 years ago, maybe 13 years now. How far we've come, I hope. Our first weddings, we charged them their utility readings, their meter readings. So after your wedding, we charge you your gas and electricity. So we have come on a hell of a journey since then. And, we didn't even have curtains and furniture. The house was derelict, really. So I've been through that journey. Hopefully, hopefully we are far from those days, but hopefully that's useful. We only have days of the week at different pricing, not months. They're all the same price. And someone else has written, same for us, Monday to Thursday, and then Friday to Sunday rates. So I would, with a huge amount of confidence, but could always be wrong in personal opinion, but I'd highly recommend that, or I'd expect changing to a more dynamic pricing, where you have different prices for at least summer, shoulder, winter, will be extremely effective, and would do message, and love to see how that works. Cool. I think it's probably best we stop there. Thank you for everyone's time. And as I said, if you want a template, if you want to talk through some stuff, the lucky team have already had a training session with me, and I'm training them up more and talking through all of this. So they're much more experts than I am now, but I'm very happy. If you email business@Bridebook, I will see every single email that comes in, and we work in the team and hope we can be as helpful as possible. And yeah, hope it's been a useful session. Feedback is also always welcome. We'll have more of these. And on that note, if I don't speak to you before Christmas, have a great Christmas. Well done for getting to the end of 2020, a year we all, I think, want to forget. But hopefully this helps, and many other things. And I'll be very optimistic about 2021. And it's extremely, it's extremely exciting and raring to go as a venue, as Bridebook. We're always here to help and get everyone back to the enjoyable industry we're supposed to be. So happy Christmas, and thank you all for joining. Bye-bye.